Hi, welcome back to the next installment, we call it Snippets, from the video version of the novel, The President and the Cockroach. Today we're going to read the first part from Chapter 5, and Chapter 5 is entitled Mr. Beans Visits the Red Island. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Here we go. The North Koreans had tested ballistic missiles every day for the past 2 weeks, and both the Sea of Japan and the western part of the North Pacific were littered with the big, rigid first and second stage fuselages, engines, solid fuel, and LOX tanks, guidance systems now reduced to tiny bits of metal and plastic, antennae, and brightly painted nose cones, each lovingly stenciled in Hangul lettering with a mash note of praise of our beloved and glorious Supreme Leader that go with nuclear warhead-toting ICBMs like gravy goes with grits. There had been a terrible massacre in Denmark, he had heard. The horrific details were still coming to light. Russia had filled every border crossing on its side into Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Finland, Belarus, Ukraine, Georgia, and Azerbaijan with thousands of well-armed and uniformed tourists demanding entry for vacations. Strangely, this was not occurring at the border of Kazakhstan because, well, who cared about Kazakhstan? Really? A strange, even more ultra-violent branch of the Islamic State of Iraq and Levant, calling itself ISIS, blew up 34 of its members on Highway 1 halfway between Iraq and the Syrian border headed west. The 7 beat-up 2002 and 2003 Toyota Echo coupes they had ridden in were reduced to smoldering piles of metal and plastic, surrounded by charred handbills. The handbills, all in English, read, "We'll be there in a few minutes, infidel bitches." Back in the good old US of A. 3 bridges that had once crossed 3 separate Midwestern rivers had sunk into the rivers that they had formerly spanned. They hadn't simply broken and fallen into those waters. The piers, towers, cables, and hangars had suspended them. The roadway simply sank into the waters that once flowed beneath them, sucked in like, well, never mind. For the past 2 weeks, the transmission lines that had connected the power generating station in Trenton and the step-down transformers in Atlantic City, but which unfortunately were strung all over the Pine Barrens, had been experiencing power surges, some sort of electromagnetic flaring, and the electricity they carried would wink out and then reappear later. Strangely, well, this was New Jersey, all of the television programs that were being viewed at the end of the transmission lines were filled with ghosts. And they weren't just offset replicas of transmitted images either. That certainly didn't look good. Who would the president call? His old friend Buster Peck at the EPA. One problem solved. And for the past 3 weeks, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of demonstrators had filled the streets in cities and towns. And at one crossroads where FM 230 meets FM 105, about 15 miles northeast of Tahoka, Texas, 2 cowboys blocked the intersection with their navy silver and by God white 1996 Ford F-150 4x4, stood in the truck's bed and held up a sign with arrows pointing at each of them that read, 5 divorces, 3 bankruptcies, we ain't no fucking amateurs. Protesting, President Beans had assigned some staff to collect data on exactly what was being protested so that he could address the nation's concern. But at last count, the only concern that the nation seemed to have was about Hillary F. Beans. Let's just say that the president was not beloved. That would have to change. A scapegoat. President Beans needed a scapegoat. So President Beans had bravely vetoed a bill to finish an oil pipeline that was to run from Murray Hill, Heathcote in Scarsdale, New York, through Greenhaven in Rye, New York, over the Westchester Country Club in Harrison, New York, through Round Hill in North Greenwich, Connecticut, into the New Money part of Stamford, and then into New Canaan, finally reaching the Long Island Sound in Westport after meandering through the Tocanique section of Darien. As soon as the ink on this first veto was dry, the president signed a bill, originally sponsored by some Oklahoma congressman, to convert the Los Angeles River, most of which is a convenient cement-covered spillway, into an open-air oil aqueduct, an aqueduct that would transport oil instead of water, to cheaply move any liquid or nearly liquid petrochemicals that might be discovered or retrieved at present or in the future in California's Central Valley directly and without any pesky pipelines to San Diego, where it could be used to power the ships of our glorious Navy or simply be sold to whomever was bidding. And to assuage any anger that Angelenos might later feel, President Bean signed an executive order retroactively making the Lakers the NBA champs for 89, 91, 2004, and 2008. It was the least he could do. The president also signed an executive order transferring the personnel currently working for the National Park Service to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, just until the crisis with any illegals, was brought under control. They already had nice green uniforms and could hide in bushes and clumps of grass. He initialed the proposal by the nice ICE folks for the nationwide television, Snapchat, and Instagram campaign. If you have illegals, or just someone who might be illegal, or know someone who might know someone who might be illegal, living next door, please call the ICE number and let our boys and girls in red, white, and blue know. You'll be doing your patriotic duty, and those folks will be picked up and put in holding facilities until they are deported. Their belongings will be sold to pay for their room and board at the facilities, and you will get a commission of 10% of whatever their stuff sells for. The illegal stuff sales will take place every 2 weeks on the backloading platform of your local ICE houses. And to calm the nerves of the people of the rest of the world outside the borders of the USA, the Secretary of State held a news conference and explained that the United States had no plans to take any other country's oil or gas or gold or uranium or minerals or genomes or people or animals, endangered or otherwise, or timber or heritage seas or artworks or music or land or water or culture or promising young people or anything. Nope, no plans. Nope, no plans.